Hello everybody, welcome to this video where we're going to discuss 20 self-refuting statements. These are statements that, by analogy, cut off the branch that they are sitting on. So they are undercutting themselves. Another analogy is cutting off their own legs, but that would have been a little bit violent. So why don't we start with a quote from G.K. Chesterton, one of my favorite writers. He says, "Be careful not to be so open-minded that your brains fall out." We want to be open-minded, we want to think about things, but we want to be careful about what we believe. Otherwise, we'll lose our minds. We don't want to be brainwashed, and that's what will happen if we just believe everything. So we've got to think critically. And here are some statements that we can notice right away, just by their own standards, are not true. First of all, this statement is false. If the statement's false, it's claiming to be true. And so in order for it to be true, it has to be false. But then if it's false, it's not true. So it's paradoxical, self-refuting statement. That's number one. Statement number two, there is no such thing as objective truth. Well, if this statement is true, then this statement is also not objectively true. What's really strange is that this is a common belief today. A lot of people really think that there is no objective truth. And yet we can see that that doesn't make any sense when we think about the statement in the context of what it's saying, right? So the branch that it's sitting on is the idea of truth, and yet it's taking away the idea of truth. Statement three, science is the only way to know what is true. This is a very common idea today, but here's the thing, how does science work? Science works by experiment and testing the physical world. This statement is not one that can be tested by an experiment. Here's a visual on this. You can imagine that there's a domain, and this is philosophy. So everything that is in the realm of philosophy goes into that circle, and science goes into this circle here. Now, where does this statement belong? This statement belongs in here. And yet, at the same time, this statement is crossing out this circle and saying that this is the only circle that really matters. Right? So it's sitting on the branch of philosophy because it's a philosophical statement about science, and yet at the same time, it's trying to cut off the branch of philosophy. Four, it's intolerant to think that one idea is better than another. Well, this is an idea that's claiming to be better than other ideas, and so it's intolerant by its own standard. Statement five, if objective truth exists, it cannot be known. So it's taking away the ability to know anything as objectively true, and yet it's claiming to be objectively true as well. So another self-refuting statement. Six, this one is common to see statements like this in logic puzzles where there are liars and truth tellers and something like that. And in those logic puzzles, no one can ever say, I am a liar, in the sense that every statement that I say is a lie. If they're a liar, they can't tell the truth about being a liar. A liar can only say, I am a truth teller. Seven, you shouldn't believe a word I say. Well, if you shouldn't believe a word I say, then you shouldn't believe this statement about what I'm saying. Eight, statements cannot be true. There are actually some trends in philosophy that ascribe to this, that we can't describe statements as true or false. You just say the statement itself. But again, this is a statement, and it's a statement that's claiming to be true. And yet it's saying that statements cannot be true. And so that would have to be applied to this statement as well, self-refuting. 9, only statements that can be verified by experiment can be known to be true. This is a rewording of what is known as Newton's flaming laser sword. If it cannot be tested by experiment, it is not worthy of debate. This has the same problem as the other statement, right? It's saying that only science is what we can know to be true. So what is this? This is a philosophical statement. Again, right? All of this goes in here. And what it's saying, though, is that only science, only what operates by experiment, is what we can know to be true. And we can't know that philosophy is true. And yet, it is a philosophical statement. All propositions are false. Again, some trends in philosophy will say that propositions are false. Propositions are not things that we can know. But again, this is a proposition. and so it would undercut itself. 11, it cannot be known if a statement is true or false. Again, that would have to apply to this statement. We cannot know if this statement is true or false. 12, it is wrong to make any judgment. This statement is a judgment. It is a judgment that it's wrong to make any judgment. And so again, it undercuts itself. It cuts off the branch that it's sitting on because it's sitting on the branch of having to make a judgment. Every statement is a judgment of some kind. And then it says that there are no judgments. 13, you ought to doubt every statement that you cannot prove. This was how Descartes kind of started his radical doubt. But then what about this statement? Can you prove that you ought to doubt every statement that you cannot prove? You have to wonder how you might go about doing that. And so it's cutting off the branch that is all statements that we cannot prove, and yet this itself is a statement that we cannot prove. 14, words are meaningless. Well, the statement is made of words, and so it needs words to be able to make the statement, and yet it has an idea and it conveys a meaning, and it says that we cannot, that words are all meaningless. So again, it undercuts its own reliance on words and what they mean. I saw a documentary that disproved the reliability of memory. I actually heard a philosophy professor say this once. He came into the class and he was talking about memory, and memory is unreliable, this documentary that he saw. I reflected later and I thought, I wonder how he could be so confident in his memory if he thought memories were so faulty, as having been shown by that documentary. So, and this is sitting on the branch of memory, the memory of the documentary, and yet it's trying to cut off the reliability of memory. 16, all our beliefs are just wish fulfillments of our desires, so sort of a Freudian idea. Well, this is also a belief, and so it has to be asked, well, isn't this also just a wish fulfillment of some desire that we have for our ideas to be wish fulfillment? 17, similar idea, we only believe what we want to believe. Again, you'd have to say that about this statement as well, because this is a belief. And if we only believe what we want to believe, well, that would mean that whoever is saying this only believes it because this is what they want to believe. 18, okay, got split up on a couple different pages here. It's a quote from David Hume, work by David Hume. If we take in our hand any volume of divinity or school metaphysic, for instance, let us ask, does it contain any abstract reasoning concerning quantity or number? In other words, mathematics. No. Does it contain any experimental reasoning concerning matter of fact and existence? In other words, science. No. Commit it then to the flames, for it can contain nothing but sophistry and illusion. So what he's saying is that if it's not math and if it's not science, then it's unreliable. It's just sophistry and illusion. The problem is, this whole book, and even this statement, this is not mathematics, and it's not science. He's not reporting on math, and he's not reporting on any experimental data that he took. And so, it's self-refuting. He's making a philosophical statement that philosophical statements are unreliable. 19, there's an exception to every rule. This is making a general statement about every rule, that there's an exception to it, and yet it's leaving out that it would imply that there's also an exception to this rule. And 20, all generalities are false. This is also a generality, and so it would have to be false. So there you have it, 12 self-refuting statements. So don't fall for them, and be on the lookout so you don't become brainwashed. This is the beginning, thinking critically, thinking about the meanings of the statements themselves and how they could be true, what they mean, and what they mean about themselves as well. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.